On February 20th, Psycho Killer, the new film from the twisted writer of 7 and 8mm and the producers of Barbarian and a producer of Weapons, arrives only in theaters. Psycho Killer is a heart-pounding and twisted slasher film told from both ends of the knife, where every kill brings you deeper into the mind of the psycho killer and the police officer tracking him, keeping audiences on the edge of their seat in a big screen event. Don't see it alone. Meet your new nightmare. Psycho Killer, only in theaters February 20th. Get tickets now, rated R.
Watch The Toxic Avenger now on Screambox. The radioactive superhero that's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes is available to watch now from the comfort of your home. Bloody FM listeners get a special introductory offer by going to bit.ly/ToxyFM. That's bit.ly/ToxieFM for a special offer on Screambox.
Sometimes you gotta do something.
Welcome to Horror Bytes on Safe Room, the show where we discuss the smaller scares and teenier terrors available to play on your gaming devices. From 5-minute prototypes to tantalising demos and ambitious small-scale games, Horror Bytes aims to celebrate all kinds of terrifying micro-monsters in the indie horror gaming space. I am your host Neil Bolt, and joining me as ever in this endeavour is Jay Krieger. How you doing, Jay?
Hey man, just trying to, survive the horrors that arise of that rise and grind lifestyle.
Indeed, but before we get into that, in case you hadn't seen or heard recently about the changes to Horror Bytes, episodes now run every other Thursday and feature 2 games that were chosen based on a theme. They don't have to be new, they just have to fit the chosen theme. So we are onto a new theme, having done detectives in the last couple of episodes, and Jay has chosen this one, and it is occupational drudgery. So we must select a small horror game, a concept, a game jam, and the like that will basically fit that. And so, Jay, tell us what occupational drudgery entails.
So occupational drudgery is all about that, 5 to survive type horror games, games that utilize a workplace setting that sort of just expose the horrors of any type of job that is fairly repetitive in terms of its tasks and whatnot. And, this is a theme that intermittently we have covered previously on games for Horror Bytes and whatnot. But, I think based upon this week's picks, we kind of both picked opposite ends of the spectrum in that regard, right? Not to spoil the lead on yours, but yours is a little bit more based in an occupation that's a little more grounded, whereas mine is a bit more in the realm of, dystopian, if you will. So, no, I think this is great that we get to kind of utilize the entire month to cover occupational drudgery and whatnot, and see just how creative the different developers can get with that sort of premise.
Yeah, I think we've dubbed it in the past, basically jobs for the ghouls. I think that's that one. But with that in mind, can you kick us off with your key clacking game, Terminal Lucidity?
Yeah, Terminal Lucidity is from developer Happy Accident Studios, and while this game is available for free on Steam, people can buy the digital art book that is available in the sort of DLC section for $2.99. As always, we want people to support developers whenever they can, even if their games are free. So if you play the game and enjoy it, definitely consider doing that. But yeah, Terminal Lucidity has the player taking on the role of a technician that's tasked with servicing a series of seance engines or computer terminals in this underground facility. Their employer, Babel Telecommunications. So you basically need to crack a series of computer codes and ciphers to unlock doors that will lead to the next bank of computers. The further that the player is able to proceed through this facility, the further to the truth of what's going on and the sort of intention of the facility itself will be revealed. So right off the bat, this game reminded me immediately of a game that we covered last year, and it was one of one of my horror bites of the year, which was Split from developer Mike Klubnicka. So from a gameplay standpoint and a premise standpoint, it reminded me of Split. But then in terms of the storytelling here, I thought it reminded me actually of frictional games a bit with Soma in terms of the narrative here. So, I think right off the bat, the grungy industrial hell atmosphere of Terminal Lucidity, I think, does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of like utilizing the genre of horror, because this is not a experience that is concerned with, being scary or having jump scares or those traditional kinds of standbys. It's more about just like creating this suffocating atmosphere of dread that you feel even if, you don't have a lot happening around you, which I think is really great for like this just oppressive atmosphere that further informs a lot of the sort of like storytelling that's going on here, and storytelling that is largely told through the environment of the game itself. I think a lot of this, I mentioned ciphers when I was kind of summarizing what this game is about. You'll find these, posters or little notes scrolled on walls that give you more context for how the player should progress through the next series of puzzles, or just in general, giving you this sort of like flavor of the world, if you will. And yeah, much like Split, this is a game that is very technical in that regard, in that you're going to be going through various computers and you're going to have to be typing out these various like prompts basically, or running executables to kind of like progress to the next series of computer banks and whatnot. So, it was great to have that primer of playing Split previously, because I kind of was like immediately conditioned to know what I was getting into with Terminal Lucidity. I'll have the same disclaimer for this that I had for Split, which is that like, if you're not really into that, this game probably is not going to do much for you. But if you can kind of like change your frame of thinking, get on board with the sort of like more nuanced nature of, okay, I really have to pay attention to what lines of code here to run, what kinds of networks am I going to have to connect to? Then, I think curiosity, what I'm trying to say is curiosity is like the big driving factor of this game. I really wanted to know more about the various environments, what's going on, the setting. And so I really dug into those little clues. And that kind of like propelled me through this, considering, one of the most notable aspects of this game also, for being this sort of like puzzle game, is that there's no saving. So this is like a true to form, single serving slice of horror. And, I think for me, I probably spent 90 minutes playing this. So it is one of those things that, there is a steep learning curve. So if you're going to set out to play this game, I would definitely recommend having a good chunk of time kind of set aside for this, in terms of just like getting acclimated with what it expects of you and whatnot, before you even sort of get into the actual solving of the puzzles and whatnot. But before I go any further, what did you think of Terminal Lucidity?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of discussed before about, as with Split, you have to have a certain enthusiasm for this kind of game to really be into it. Which, like I said then, I think with that one, it's a bit difficult for me at times. But I think I found the right time to be playing it, I think, which was at the end of a work day, just still sat at my desk, thankfully, I think, because, it's really, you can't play it any other way, I think. So, and having access to a notebook and stuff like that next to me, it was probably the optimal way to play it. And it felt a bit more like immersive, if you will, because it's a lot of computer work and stuff like that. But yeah, as you said, it's got this enticing hook behind it in terms of that environment and the sort of slow realization of what's happening with the game. And I do like puzzles in the sense when they do make you feel clever enough without being like ridiculous, like that. And I think there are some like that in here once you get into the rhythm of what it's doing. And I think especially for the end of the game, it really does make it quite fascinating to sort of put all these things together and seeing the results of that. But I mean, on a technical level, it had some issues, I think, in terms of like when things get a bit hectic. But yeah, it's not a super fast-paced game, so it's not terribly impactful on that thing. But it's like, in a way, it almost feels like weirdly meta for some of the stuff as well. You are just having issues, but yeah, no, it's atmospheric, which I think for a game that is mostly about staring at screens on your screen is quite effective. And I'm really impressed that they managed to get that much out of it.
Yeah, I think ultimately for me, building off of that sense of an atmospheric environment and a sense of place is just, there's some really creepy use of dialogue in this, but I suppose dialogue is not entirely accurate. It's more like the text that you read on the various computers. And I'm not going to spoil that aspect of it just because, or by providing examples, because that really is one of the really creepy realizations about this game and sort of like the spooky nature. Because I wouldn't say it's a scary game, which is totally fine, but it is a very unnerving game in terms of that storytelling, which is what sort of like made me have that comparison with something along the lines of, frictional games is Soma. So yeah, like this really is one of those games that if you can get on board with sort of like the direction it's taking and whatnot, I think you'll be rewarded in terms of approaching it with that curiosity and doing the digging that you need to like find those answers, because then it kind of makes you go back and think about other aspects of, solving some of these puzzles and the implications of that with this world. And for this game that I kind of just like, again, randomly stumbled upon, which is how we like our horror bites. This was one that is very, very memorable in a way that is familiar because of us playing Split, but at the same time, like very clearly doing its own thing in a manner that really worked for me. So I was happy to get to bring this one to the table this week.
Yeah, and it's a fairly new game as well, so it'll be quite nice to. It doesn't feel like I've played much new yet in terms of games. So yeah, that's grand. We will be back with our second pick though right after this.
On February 20th, Psycho Killer, the new film from the twisted writer of 7 and 8 millimeter and the producers of Barbarian and a producer of Weapons, arrives only in theaters. Psycho Killer is a heart-pounding and twisted slasher film told from both ends of the knife, where every kill brings you deeper into the mind of the psycho killer and the police officer tracking him, keeping audiences on the edge of their seat in a big screen event. Don't see it alone. Meet your new nightmare. Psycho Killer, only in theaters February 20th. Get tickets now, rated R.
Welcome back. For my pick, we have a demo for Firering Studios' The Sweet Spot. This 3D workplace game is described as a cozy horror game where you're on the last shift of the day at an 80s ice cream shop. The job entails basically taking customer orders, making the ice cream, and serving the customers. Oh, and of course, watching out for anything strange that might be happening. The demo only covers the first night of the game, and as such, it's all about establishing the routine, which makes it quite good for this theme that we've had in terms of like in getting the drudgery right. I mean, that makes it very predictable to some degree, but understandable given the abundance of games like this that pretty much set up the same kind of rhythm. There's still a couple of moments, the end of the demo consists of closing up the shop, and it captures a bit of this unease of shutting up a business at night on your own quite well. Yeah, I mean, it means there isn't a lot to say. It is like you do a bit of the. I mean, we've covered a few games like this in recent memory as well, where we've had making food, talking to customers, but it's quite limited in that regard. It's nothing special. It gets absurd a little in terms of like the like when you've got to clean up with the mop. It's like, clean up any spilled ice cream, and it's like, they basically seem to have spilled their entire fucking ice cream on the floor.
Looks like a container of mint chip bled out onto the floor.
Yeah, that's it. Which is funny and absurd. It's like that. Yeah, I mean, it leaves it on an interesting hook, and I do wonder if it's more of a vertical slice than a demo, just because either that's like a prelude to whatever the main story is, or like that the end is maybe cribbed from something later in the game, because it sort of goes from 1 to 100 out of nowhere at that point, and which again is just familiarity with the things that will happen in these games and truncated into something quite small. But yeah, I like the concept. Like games that involve making food for people. That's great. Yeah, do that. And ice cream's an interesting one. Like a bit of ice cream horror can't go amiss. But yeah, there's not a huge amount you can say more than that, really, because it is just that single bit. But yeah, as sort of mood setters, not bad. How do you find it?
Yeah, as somebody that spent all of high school and part of the first year of college working in an ice cream shop, this one
Oh,
definitely kind of spoke to me in a way that I was anticipating. And, you know, like you said, this is very much the sort of like primer, right? So, like,
yeah.
while it doesn't, what we played does not heavily imply sort of like the horror that's there. I think that just from the sense of like establishing this, you know, the job that you're going to be doing and
Mhm.
sort of like the role that you have there, I think that it nails the sort of like tone perfectly well, right? It's like you get your first taste of dealing with customers, right? So it's like most customers you would hope would be fairly routine and normal, and then you're always going to get that asshole customer that's like
Oh, yeah.
make it right, even though the fact that all they ordered, I think the example in the game is like they ordered like a fucking strawberry ice cream. It's like, how do you screw that up? And it's like, yeah, you'd be surprised. People can be fucking dickheads about anything. So it really is one of those things where like from the horror side of things, you get a glimmer here or there. There's like a jump scare, and then there's a customer that says, oh, I hope you last longer than the last person. So like you can kind of see the groundwork being layered there. But for
Yeah.
me, like what was most important, I think, was just like capturing the sense of working in a service industry job and the fact that like, yeah, on paper this is simple, but the thing that's difficult is dealing with people
Yeah.
because people, you know, can be assholes. It's like, yeah, somebody comes in with a complex order. That's one thing, but it's more just like teaching yourself not to tell somebody to fuck off when they're rude for absolutely no reason at all. And so, yeah, like from that aspect of it, I found that Sweet Spot kind of like nailed that workplace atmosphere aspect, which is important. You know, if you're going to be using that as a setting, you would hope that it's someone that clearly like is able to sort of like impart more than likely their own experience working in, you know, service industry type job or something, which I found that the Sweet Spot kind of like nailed, even if it was in that brief 10-minute slice, if you will. So yeah, in that regard, I thought this was promising. And yeah, it seems like they're going to further develop this into, you know, a full-fledged release that I believe they said the story mode, if you will be about an hour long. And then
Mm.
there's going to be like a limitless mode or endless mode where you're just like continually making orders. So it'll be interesting in terms of that hour long story mode, like how much horror they're able to impart, whether that be sort of like the retail side of things or just the actual, you know, genre aspects of it that will hopefully be a little bit more a little more present in that final release.
Yeah, I mean, and like you can wishlist it on Steam as well. I mean, so
Mm,
it's if you want to keep an eye out for it, which I think we'll be doing as well, just to
mm,
see how the main game turns out. I
yeah.
mean, and just to say, you know, visually speaking, it's like again nice to see we're sort of moving on a bit from the PSX style thing. As much as it's been enjoyable, I think yeah, having a slightly more refined
Mm,
just look, you know, helps. I think, yeah, especially in terms of detail
yeah.
like that. I think the people that still work in that and do it well, like have an understanding of how that aesthetic works and what does it for them. But yeah, this is like kind of like early Gmoddy sort of in
Mm,
sort of visual style of it. And I quite like that because that in itself has a very surreal thing to it, just because of its relationship with the internet anyway. So yeah, like that. It's good for like the character faces and stuff. I think in terms of like giving them like these little smirks and snarks and dopiness and whatever. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, be interesting to see, especially for an hour long game. I think it'll probably hit the right sort of pace.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but that is it for this weekend. As I said, you know, you can find links to this episode's games in the description of the episode. But that is all that we've got. Thank you again, Jay, for talking about these short horror games with me. But if you, the listener, have a short horror game demo, game jam entry, or proof of concept that you think that we should be highlighting, or maybe you would like to suggest a theme for some episodes, Jay here will show you how.
Yeah, people can find us on their preferred social media platforms at Safe Room Pod. And for people that want to reach out to us via email, you can email us at saferoompod@gmail.com.
Fantastic. We will be back with 2 more small-scale horror games about occupational drudgery in 2 weeks' time.
On February 20th, Psycho Killer, the new film from the twisted writer of 7 and 8mm and the producers of Barbarian and a producer of Weapons, arrives only in theaters. Psycho Killer is a heart-pounding and twisted slasher film told from both ends of the knife, where every kill brings you deeper into the mind of the psycho killer and the police officer tracking him, keeping audiences on the edge of their seat in a big screen event. Don't see it alone. Meet your new nightmare. Psycho Killer, only in theaters February 20th. Get tickets now, rated R.
Watch The Toxic Avenger now on Screambox. The radioactive superhero that's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes is available to watch now from the comfort of your home. Bloody FM listeners get a special introductory offer by going to bit.ly/ToxieFM. That's bit.ly/ToxieFM for a special offer on Screambox.
Sometimes you gotta do something.